This is the Relentless Podcast. My name is Christine. I'm a small business owner and student of success. I have become obsessed with talking with other entrepreneurs about their strategies, struggles, tactics, and routines. One of the key qualities that all of these individuals have in common, their ability to be relentless. Hey guys, welcome back to the Relentless Podcast. I just wrapped a great conversation with friend and real estate agent, Julia Furano. She is very successful in the real estate business in Rochester. And I asked her to come on because I've been following her on social media for a long time. She has a really neat approach to, her content and reaching people and telling great stories. And we go through all of it in this. We talk about making connections and building relationships with people, finding a mentor, keeping yourself accountable. And I just think it's a really valuable conversation for anybody in real estate or in business. There's a lot of kind of transferable skills. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Take a listen. Welcome to the show, Julia Furano.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. That's a high standard there, but
yes.
Here we go.
Well, so you and I met a long time ago when my brother was dating your sister and we were going to Vinyl in downtown Rochester. I was trying to think of this. I was like, my gosh, the IDs might not have been real, but the dance moves were totally.
And look at us now. Look how far we've come.
So lots happened in that time. So tell us a little bit how you got into real estate in Rochester.
Yeah, so I've been in real estate for 12 years now, which feels some days like yesterday and other days it feels like years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So it just depends on the day and the week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started 12 years ago. It was sort of a leap of faith at the time. I didn't really know anyone in real estate.
Yeah.
And I connected with a broker in Rochester and chatted a little bit about getting into it.
Yeah.
So I left my job, my very stable job.
Yeah.
I jumped with 2 feet in and didn't look back. I think once you find something you enjoy doing, you're just kind of in it. Right?
Yep.
And you do what you have to do to get through it and make something of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that was one of the things, aside from just how much I love following you on social media, is there are so many transferable things between entrepreneurship and being an agent because, it's commission-based. You have to chase down your own leads. It is essentially your business. And so, I think there's just so many similarities there. So, I mean, how did you start? When you started, did you have a mentor tell you how to find people or how to get your name out there? Like, how did that look?
Yeah, I didn't really have a mentor when I got into it. And actually, that's one of my maybe biggest regrets of not finding a mentor sooner. Because I was in real estate on my own for about 2 years.
Okay.
And then a mutual agent was like, hey, have you ever thought about coming to RE/MAX? And I was like, no.
Yeah.
And I met with RE/MAX and I was planning on maybe just transferring over there on my own, bringing my license. And my broker now, Tom, said, have you ever met with Amy Patrone? And I said, no, I have not. And, at the time I didn't realize I was looking for a mentor, but I think very organically that's what happened.
Okay.
And so I'm like the biggest supporter now of finding mentors, right?
Yeah.
Someone who's in the business doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
That can kind of show you the ropes, because I think what a lot of people don't realize is that agents, they are their own business, right? So RE/MAX might hold my license, but I'm an independent contractor, essentially. And so I think anytime you can kind of hitch yourself to someone who's really doing it and believes in the same things that you believe in, it will just naturally help you become a better agent, become a better person. Yeah. And so I'm a big proponent of mentorship.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of leads right into our topic a little bit, because for some of us too, like I didn't really have any local people that were in the industry of fashion or owning a boutique or anything. And so I did turn to people on social media, and maybe not even communicating with them, but observing and seeing, okay, what are they doing? There's so much content that, people put out of like, oh, here's my process for purchasing, or here's the shows I go to. And so, it's we live in a great time where there's this tool that you can find all these resources out there until you can find an in-person mentor or something. So let's shift to that with social media. So when you started getting listings and doing things, did you just put, here's the listing, here's what's available, or did you jump right into being a little bit more creative?
That's a great question. So I wish I could say like my brand now versus when I started are two totally different things.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like you get those like time hop things.
Like, sometimes you're like, oh, cringe.
Oh God, I can't believe I put that out there.
Yeah.
But I think, the more you do something, the more you find your own rhythm.
Yeah.
So that you're not all just putting the same thing out there, right? Because that's boring.
Yeah.
Right? If everyone's just saying, here's my listing,
yeah.
here's the square footage. And I wish I could also say, I love marketing. That's kind of the core of what I love about real estate.
Yeah.
And so I wish I could say that I made this master plan and sat down and was like, here's my marketing for social media. But it really kind of happened organically for me, which maybe those are the best marketing plans.
Oh,
right?
for
the ones
sure.
that are natural to you.
Yeah.
And I just started writing about the people, right? Because yes, I sell homes, right? That's what I do. But it's more about the people that are in the homes. And I feel like that's more relatable than just putting up a pretty picture of a house, right? If someone wants to see a pretty house, they can go to, tons of different websites.
Yeah, anywhere. Yeah.
But I think knowing the story behind the people in the homes is what is relatable about it. So, I started just telling stories about the people who bought the homes or people that are selling the homes. And for a while, I was like, are people even reading these things besides my mom? But I've had people say, oh my gosh, I loved that story about that. Or, times when I talked about, someone having a really hard time finding a home and it took them years to find a home. I had someone that I hadn't spoken with in years direct message me of, I'm so glad you posted that. I'm looking for a house in Florida. Yeah. And it's literally taking us such a long period of time. I thought it was just us. So I think anytime you can kind of find a common element, it resonates with people.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest, social media can be intimidating. And I was saying to you off camera, I can't tell you how many people in business, they're like, I need to do more on social media, but I'm just not really a public person, or I don't know what to do. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is, like I say, people think they have to say, okay, here's what I sell, here's the price, here's the detail, rather than, giving it like a fresh look. And like you say, doing something that gives people a connection. And the thing with social media too, is I always try to remind myself, it's not about that individual sale. It's about planting all these little seeds, building a personal brand, building a relationship, letting people know who you are. And some of your favorite, or my favorite content of yours has been, when you've gotten a little silly too and hopped on like a fun trend, or, you know what I mean? And I think it's fun to mix in that type of those things that show a little bit more of your unique personality, because if you're in a saturated market, which across the country, a lot of real estate markets have a lot of agents. And so it's like, what makes you stand out? And so do you enjoy kind of doing some of those more fun off the cuff things?
I do. I mean, they're very nerve-wracking. They're not my... just hop on the camera. But I also think there's something vulnerable about turning the camera around and being in front of the camera. And those, I think the ones where I am a little bit sillier, are doing the dances, which I'm sure in 10 years, those will come up on my time hop and I'll be like, oh God. But I think that those are the fun ones that do show the personality, because to your point, right, there are other options, right? There's I think 3,000 agents in Rochester. And so, you have to remind people that you're not just hiring an agent, you're hiring a person, and what they believe in and what they do. And so you kind of have to find that perfect match, something, probably similar to your business of like, there's other shops, right? And so you kind of have to give them a reason on a social media platform of like buying into that brand. Right? And the reason that they come to you is because they like your story and what you're putting out there. And I think anytime you can do that on a social media platform to build that relationship that maybe you don't even realize you're building that relationship at that time. I think it ends up, kind of paying off in the long run. And I'm not meaning in like a monetary sense, but like the total brand of your business.
100%. And I mean, we also live in a time too, where I feel like social media can give you credibility. If you say, okay, oh yeah, real estate agent Julia Furano, and then you look it up and you see she's got all these videos, she's got followers, it almost gives you a little bit of like validation to the customer of like, okay, she's in the business, she knows what she's doing. And so, I mean, do you think that, like, let me put it this way. Do you mix up the content that you put out? So like some of it will be self-promotion or some of it will be like, here's my history, here's this, and then work on something new. Because like for us, rather than we can get into ruts where we will just put out, this is what we sell, this is what we sell. And I'm like, okay, let's put out something funny. Let's do something funnier. Like right now we're doing introductions because we have new followers. So do you have like a formula or something that you mix different content into your social media?
I try to, certainly. After house closes, I always post something about the people that move into that home. But you don't want to read, one every day.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That kind of loses its fun and attraction there. So I certainly think switching it up a little bit and building that. But I always also think there's room for improvement.
Yeah.
So I think you like kind of also turn to other people and say, oh, like, what do I love about their social media account? And then try to like hop on some of those trends as well.
Yeah.
I think Instagram especially is a great platform because you can learn from other people, even if they're not in the same industry as you, that you can kind of take some of those fun ideas and, kind of rebrand them so that they fit to your brand and make it feel a little bit more organic in that sense.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, do you have a particularly favorite platform? Do you post across all of them? Do you cater your content to different platforms? Like what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love Instagram, maybe too much.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I just, I don't want to say wasted, but spent, 30 minutes scrolling through Reels.
Yes.
Where you kind of get sucked in there that you've got to maybe set a timer for yourself.
Yeah.
So I like Instagram a lot. I like the images. I like the videos. And then, I mean, Facebook is very similar now in that way. They have the Reels and all that. So most of my stuff feeds just directly from Instagram over to Facebook. But most of my followers and interactions happen on Instagram. Yeah.
Do you do anything on TikTok?
I do not do anything on TikTok.
I feel like a grandma.
Yeah, I don't even know. I think I actually have an account somewhere on TikTok.
Yeah.
What the password is, I don't know. Maybe I have like 1 million followers on there and don't even realize.
I know.
But I am not really on TikTok. I would love to know more about TikTok, but that's
I certainly have not mastered it. I mean, with Instagram and with Facebook, I feel like you have this following, and when you put something out there, it's pretty linear. So it's like your people will pretty much see that like in the next couple days, it'll be relevant. Basically the area of people that you're reaching, the demographics, all that stuff. When I put something out on TikTok, it's just like, God bless.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens
here. Yeah.
Because, and I mean, I'll get likes on videos from 1.5 years ago. And I'm like, wait, I don't even have that in the store anymore. Like, don't show that.
Yeah, right. That's not it.
You know what I mean? So I still am just not used to it. And I feel like on TikTok, the things that, not necessarily go viral, but perform well are very different. So I've actually brought in some younger girls, and they're kind of doing more of the TikTok stuff because I'm like, I kind of know what I'm doing over here in Instagram and Facebook world, but like TikTok is still
like a whole other world.
Such a big question mark to me. So I definitely have, room to improve there. But so, and you mentioned the Reels, which I have I love Reels so much. I think they're the best thing to watch, the best thing to make. Do you do a combination of just regular postings and Reels? Do you have a preference?
I do a lot of posting, obviously, just in stories. But Reels, I've picked up more this past year. I'm sure you have followed. You've seen.
I have. I know the answers to some of these questions.
But I think anytime you add a little diversity to your page, it makes it more interesting to follow along with.
Yeah.
Because I love to watch people's Reels. And so, if I like watching them, you know what I mean? And so I just try to make it more relatable to the audience.
Yeah.
And there's so many neat things you can do with Reels now to kind of show the homes, show me in the homes, things like that. So I think Reels is really kind of where, Instagram, has made its own.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think every social media book or anything out there would tell you, educate, inspire, and entertain. Like hit those 3 marks and you'll be doing fine. And you're not necessarily going to check all those boxes in each video, but if you kind of mix those things up. And so it's interesting because I like, coming up with different concepts and different ideas on how to reach people, because I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I try to convey to people who do ask me, like, what do I do? Where do I start? Is, you can't take yourself so seriously on there all the time. Yeah. And one of the things that I've noticed is I've always been a self-conscious person. I'm always like, oh my God, is my hair perfect? Is everything perfect? Like, okay, I guess now I can be on camera. And it's like, some of the biggest engagement we've gotten is when I'm like in my bed, I had already washed my face, I have my glasses on, and I'm like, hey guys, and I just do a little story or something. Yeah. So I think that, it's one of the things that I try to remind myself, and I would give advice to others, would be to show glimpses of just yourself behind the scenes, your life, those type of things, because I think in the end, it builds this trust between the viewer or your customer and you to say like, oh, I know her. Not just that she knows real estate, but I feel like I know her too, because people want to do business with people they like. So do you feel like you would give that advice as well? Or do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I certainly agree with it. I mean, most of my biggest videos, are when I'm at my house in front of the camera. I just posted one a couple weeks ago, and it was me literally at night in my kitchen. I'm half whispering because my kids are upstairs sleeping, and I'm explaining this story about this dinner that I had just, quote unquote, made.
Yeah.
If you watch it, you'll see that it didn't go that far of me making it. Yeah. But I think people want to know who you are. They want to know the story behind you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what they're buying into. Right? Yep. They want the brand. They want the relationship associated with that.
Yep.
Because again, they can go anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to give them a reason to come to you and know more about you.
Yeah.
I think people always think, oh, you're a realtor, right? You sell homes. And yes, I obviously sell homes, but to me, it's always the relationship, right?
Yes.
That's the biggest part of the picture for me, and building that relationship and that trust so that they can go around and tell their friends, she did a really good job for us because she cared, because I do care, right? Yeah. I want that to resonate and come through in the videos as well, so that they understand, a little bit about me and what I do.
Yeah. And that kind of touches on an interesting point is, maybe it was just my being naive or a weird impression that I had of like, if you're being sold something, like you're being worked over, like someone's trying to pull one over on you, right? And really it's not that. It's more like someone who is good at something or knows something well and wants to help you. Like we're in the service business, right? And so it's, it's focusing on, like you say, that relationship, and not just like, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just wanted to hop on here and tell you this fun story or whatever. Right. And so it's interesting how that can change. So if someone is in business right now or in real estate and is like, oh, I know I should be doing social media, like what advice would you give them?
Well, you're the guru of social media, but I'll fall in line here. I think just go for it, right? Start putting things out there. I mean, one of the things I struggle with is turning the camera around more, right? And so, because again, I do think there's a certain vulnerability to turning it around, but that's what people want to see. They want to see you out there. And I think people who like what they hear from you and the story that you tell them, those and people that resonates with, they're going to come to you for your expertise. Yeah. So, sometimes it's a little trial and error, right? Mm-hmm. It's, again, you go
We're
back
all terrible in the beginning.
Years ago, right? And you're like, that's not great. And then, I think practice makes a lot of progress, right? And there's always room for improvements. There's always going to probably be new platforms like TikTok to get on and make those adjustments in there. Yeah. But I would say never be afraid to continue building on your brand and adding more to the mix, because I think it just makes it more interesting and it adds more layers to what you do and to what you offer. Yeah. Right? So some posts might focus on one topic and some posts might focus on another, because, people only have that attention span, right, for 30 seconds. Yes. And so I think when you're trying to put stuff out on social media, don't feel pressured to just word vomit all out there, right?
Yeah.
You have time to build it over time.
Yes.
So that it feels true to who you are. Because
Right.
that's when it's going to be the most successful, is when it's really a reflection of who you are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's the most engaging. And I think that's a big lesson too, is that, when Instagram came out and it had all the filters and everything, it was very much like the perfection app. Like, look at how perfect we are, and I think people kind of got over that a little bit, and they actually do want to see the more real, the more realistic. Like, things don't have to be perfectly curated to resonate with people. In fact, like I say, in my experience, the less, orchestrated things are and the more natural they are, like they're just sitting here having a conversation or just watching us in the stock room or whatever, that actually grabs people better than maybe something that took us. I mean, it's like the total rub of social media where you'll plan out this whole video. Right. You'll take 2 days time and it's like, okay, 100 views. And then, you just whip it out and it's like, oh, we got 25,000 views on this. Okay. And it's just, you never know. And I think not getting caught up in the quantity of views is huge, because a couple years ago, I think it was 2 Christmases ago, we were averaging around 20,000 views on each of our videos. And it was like, we made it. We finally got this, guys. Oh my gosh, and then it totally dropped off and the algorithm changed. And at first I was in like panic mode. I'm like, God, we're just not cutting it. I don't know. And then I started looking at, other companies with many more followers than us. And I'm like, how are they only getting 500 views per video? And I'm looking at this and I got so wrapped up in that number. And then, one of my staff was like, we had like 6 people come in and buy our jeans from The Real last night. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what matters. It's not necessarily the fact of like, oh, we're reaching all of these people, but it's that the message that we're putting in there is reaching enough people to get that across, so.
And I think you also have to remember, though, that it's just one piece of your business, right? Because you also have your website. You also have your past customers going and telling their friends about it. So I wouldn't also put like all of your eggs in one basket in terms of marketing yourself. Is like, that's one component where you're going to show one aspect of who you are as a business person. But then you have all these other great channels that you can also be utilizing to build your brand. So that at the end of the day, the hope is that they come together very cohesively, where they're like, oh, I feel like I know you. Right? Because so-and-so told me about you. And then I followed you on social media and now here we are. Right?
Yes,
and
exactly.
So I think that's the ultimate goal, right, of social media, to give people glimpses of like who you are in combination with the other roads that they can find you in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point. Well, and, and I mentioned how, being a real estate broker, it's very similar to entrepreneurship. You've experienced a lot of the ups and downs of the past 4 years, as we have. And you said you started 12 years ago, so you came in after 2008. So is this, the last few years, kind of been the biggest shift that you've experienced in the market?
For sure. Absolutely. And it was sort of when COVID hit, I can remember Amy and I being on a phone call with each other when everything shut down, and they're like, realtors can't go in homes. And we were like, oh my God, what is going to happen? And there were so many unknowns, but looking back, it's just like, well, that was just another year of unknowns, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen next year. And so I think, any business that survives these unknown times, it's because they have a good base and they kind of keep their eye on the prize of like, this is not going to take us down, right? And sometimes you're set up, this is not going to take us down because you can't afford to be taken down.
That's right. There's no plan B.
Through, right? Like, this is my career. This is what I'm doing. And so I think anytime that you kind of set yourself up and build a strong foundation, you're going to see yourself succeed regardless of what the economy is doing.
Yeah. I mean, I think I knew that there were going to be moments like that. When you start a business, I'm like, there are going to be some hard times where it's like, I don't know how we're going to make it, but we're going to figure it out. And I feel like every Monday I'm like, telling myself, we're going to do this. Like, come on, girl. And but I also feel like I've gained more than a few years experience in this time, if that makes sense, because there've been so many pivots and so many adjustments.
Yes.
And, so many times where, I don't have a plan B. I don't even think about what I would do after, because I'm like, there is no after. This is it.
Right.
And, and I'm sure that for you, that's been scary because there are all of these forces that are outside your control. You can't dictate the interest rates. You can't dictate,
Right, well, people might think realtors cannot.
So what's been like the biggest challenge, would you say, over the last few years?
I think especially in the past year is helping people realize that change has happened, right? And we can't necessarily focus on the past. And that's a hard conversation to have with people.
Yeah.
Because when interest rates were 3%, right, people are able to borrow a lot more money and afford a lot more home. And so when you have the conversation today of now rates, well, I mean, they've gone down, but last November they were 8%.
Yeah.
So I think just having those hard conversations with people of like, this is the reality we're in right now, and helping them navigate that season of real estate is, one of the biggest challenges. But I think anytime that you can put yourself in the position of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just like the person not in charge, but like kind of leading them through that. You know what I'm saying? So that they can kind of follow you and trust the process of like you have their best interests, at heart to make it through that challenging time.
Yeah. Well, and one of the encouraging things, and I know it's a little bit different when you're talking about interest rates and real estate markets, is, that in times of recession or, stagnation or whatever it is, there are always these opportunities that are there. And so it's finding those opportunities. And like you say, I think it's more even just being upfront and saying, this is the way things are. We don't know, things could get better. Interest rates could, or they could get worse. We don't know.
Yeah,
and a lot of if families are relocating, I mean, they have to act now anyway. So again, it comes back to you just, being honest and building that trust and, being the authority on that to just say, this is where we are and how can I help?
You can only work with what you have. Absolutely. And I think going back to your, comment there is being truthful with them, right? I'd love to go into home and say, we can sell this for $1 million, or sit down with the buyer and say, you can definitely get everything on your wish list within there. But you want to set them up for success by painting the picture of what reality is right now.
Yeah.
And then you hope for the best, obviously, but you also have to plan for the worst, right? These are the worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
And work towards it. And I think anytime you have those harder conversations up front, people feel more successful at the end because they know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, if you overpromise up front, they're going to end up feeling disappointed at the end. So it might get you the listing, but
you want the good picture of reality, right? So that it's, fair for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and how do you deal with that uncertainty and kind of having to be the bearer of bad news at times? I mean, I'm someone who likes to control everything. So, feeling sometimes like I'm out of control is hard. And so, I mean, how do you deal with that uncertainty?
Well, anxiety. No, I'm just kidding.
Wine.
Well, I mean, there is uncertainty, but usually with, there's uncertainty, but there's always a path forward. And it's just figuring out what that path is for that person, right? And everyone has a different set of circumstances, right? And so I think you have to, it's not like one blank slate that I'm like, all right, here, everyone's on the same plan, right?
Yeah.
I think you have to sit down with whether it be a buyer or a seller and figure out what makes the most sense for them so that they feel involved in the conversation, right? Because this is their life. This is their savings. This is their family, right? And so I think it has to be kind of an intimate process where they feel in control because they know what their options are. So while it's not always great news, I think anytime you can empower someone with information, they take it better, right? They're in the driver's seat, to get to wherever it is they need to get to.
Yeah. Well, and as you were talking, it reminded me of, I think it was Ed Milet, and he said, when you feel helpless, get helpful. And so it sounds like you focus a lot on like guiding your clients through this as that being your focus of this and making the experience, as smooth for them as possible rather than necessarily like your end game or your goal for that transaction. So
100%. And it's so funny. I've had buyers through homes and like, oh, we don't like this one either. And one time the wife turned to us and she's like, are you going to fire us? And I was like, I'm not going to fire you. She's like, but we haven't found a house yet. And I said, you could look at one home. You could look at 100 homes. Like, I want you to like where you're living. Right?
Yeah.
Certainly never feel pressured to do something because you've looked at,
I know.
There's a magic cutoff number because it's not about the house for me, right? It's about the relationship.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the reasons I enjoy real estate. It's because of the relationship there. I mean, I've been with people during the highest highs of their life, right?
Yeah.
Where the next day, there's a closing and they call me on Saturday and I'm, first I panic. I'm like, oh my God, what's happened? There's a flood, something horrible. But they're like, we wanted to let you know we just got engaged last night, the first night in their new home, right? So it's those relationships that I think are the ultimate goal in real estate. But I think those relationships are built on the trust through the process that like we're in it together, whether it's one home, 10 homes, we're in this.
Yeah. And that's got to get you through the difficult times too. And I mean, so what other things do you do? I know that you come from a family of very fit and active people. So what do you do to kind of get yourself primed to handle the busyness and the chaotic nature of real estate?
So one thing, and I'm not perfect at this, I'm just going to put it out there right now, but I do try to focus more on time blocking.
Okay.
I think that there's this conception when you're a business owner that you set your own schedule, which is not true, right? I mean, you put things out on social media, but you also don't put it out, you're up at 11 o'clock, maybe doing inventory, pulling comps, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I think there's that misconception out there. But I think in terms of, setting your personal self up for success is, to put your non-negotiables out there, right? And so a couple of just as examples would be working out in the morning. And I don't enjoy really working out, but I do set aside time in the morning where I do not make any appointments. My phone goes in my gym bag. Like I don't answer anything, that's not an emergency. And I set that time aside because I always feel better at the end of it. And so I feel set up for success in that way. And then I have non-negotiables too. So like my kids, I never miss something that's important to them. Right? To me, it's not worth it. Right. So if they have a chorus concert or if they have a swim meet, like that's the priority to me. And I put that in my calendar like an appointment. Right. And so that's my time for them because I think anytime you lose track of what's important, right, to you, like your why in your business, that's when things get chaotic. Right?
Out of control.
And I think when you prioritize that, right, and you're giving people the best part of yourself, they're going to get the best part of you. And they're going to feel successful then, right? When I'm happy and I'm doing my best, I'm going to give my best work. You know what I mean? And so I think it's very much a trickle down effect from there.
100%. I mean, I've had so many people in here now, and I feel like, those non-negotiables, and for most people, exercise is one of them. And I'm like you, I like to do it first thing in the morning, and especially I always try to do 3 days of outdoor cardio a week. And this time of the year, it is tough.
Although the sun was out the past 2 days.
I know that makes such a difference. But I mean, and people say that to me all the time. They're like, "Oh my God, I wish I wanted to get out there." And I'm like, which makes you think I want to be out there, but it's like, it's Wednesday. I committed to this,
Right.
So, I think it's important to keep those commitments and those constants is the other part is, I have like a pretty rigid bedtime routine. I don't have children, so I'm allowed to do that. But, and because there are so many parts of my life and my business that I don't have control over. Like you say, people think I dictate all of it, but I don't. But I do have those set things in my life that I do like to keep somewhat constant. So I feel like I at least have some control during the day. And I do too. I just feel so much better prepared to deal with all the stuff that gets thrown at me when I get a break a sweat and start the day off on the right foot.
Just set the tone for the day. Right? And it just helps balance it all out.
Absolutely. Well, Julia, this has been amazing. Is there any other advice that you would give to somebody who's thinking about making a move in their career, if they're moving to a new area, starting a business, any of the above?
Well, if they're moving to a new area, they should call me.
Find it with Furano.
Yeah, Furano. You can find me on social media.
Yeah.
But I would say, have conversations with people. I think if you're looking to make a change in your career, find people in that industry and have conversations with them. Every person I've ever spoken to get advice, it's amazing. Like, you think going to them, you're going to be inconveniencing them. But people who are successful are usually very happy to tell you how they got successful.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I think same thing with mentors. I think any mentor out there is a mentor because they see the value in it. And they both benefit from it. So it's not like you're going to the mentor and it's take.
Right.
I think oftentimes the mentor gets something from
100%.
it as well, and you kind of grow together. So I think that would be, my biggest piece of advice if I was going to go back to myself 12 years ago, is like, find someone who's doing what you want to do, how they're doing it, and, grow from there. So.
Yeah. Well, I think that's incredible advice, and I can't wait to keep following your journey and see what you do next.
Yes.
So guys, be sure to follow Find It with Furano on Instagram and Facebook, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching and listening. Be sure to follow us on all the socials: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.